Borrow. Like, what is borrow in Summer.fi?
Yeah, so I really think of borrow as like the ability to get liquidity for your crypto assets. So maybe that's kind of like some buzzwords, so to speak, or something like that, or maybe they're a little bit fancy of words or something. But really, I think maybe it's best to think about like the situation that people find themselves in, or I find myself in. I know you've maybe found yourself in. And maybe we can talk about some examples of like when it's actually best to be able to borrow. But basically, especially in DeFi, obviously in crypto, you have these crypto assets. ETH, Wrap Staked ETH, Rocket Pool ETH, Wrap ETC, maybe something else, which we can talk about when we talk about some different protocols and stuff if you don't have those major crypto assets. But um, basically, there's a lot of potential energy, let's say, in those assets. So maybe you don't want to sell them. Maybe they went up a lot in price or something like that, especially as we get started with this new bull run, or maybe you got them last bull run. And a lot of times, if you don't want to sell them, you want to still get some money out of them, some liquidity out of them. And that's basically what borrow is. It allows you to deposit your crypto assets in one of several different protocols that we curate for trust and other different attributes and stuff like that. And you can get liquidity. You can borrow stable coins generally, but also other assets against those crypto assets that you own without giving up control of them or anything like that. So simply put, I think just a way to get cash basically from your crypto assets for a cost. And yeah, there are really some specific things that you can do, but that at a high level is basically why people borrow and what it is. How do you think about it?
Okay, great. Yeah. So I guess like kind of summarizing that up then, so like if like I'm holding ETH, and I want to borrow against it, like literally as it says, I want to borrow against my ETH. I think like we've got that on the Summerify homepage and stuff at the moment. But I want to borrow against my ETH. I give you my ETH. Effectively, I'll give the smart contracts my ETH, and the smart contracts give me back, depending on the protocol I'm using, give me back another token, often a USD stable token, whether it's DAI, USDC, USDT, or whatnot. But yeah, so that's very cool. But like, I guess always the big question is like, why? Like, why would I want to? Why would I want to borrow against like my ETH or something like that? Like, I've bought ETH to hold, right? Like, why would I want to borrow against it?
Yeah, so I think what we see is like really three huge reasons, and borrow is an interesting one because it's I think the biggest thing that we see in DeFi generally, more or less, other than like the stuff that you do constantly, like swapping or stuff like that, trading in terms of like 1 inch aggregator stuff like that. It's a really huge use case, basically. And so, to your point around the why, I think it's really around three things, or three things that we see all the time, three things that we see customers coming to do. And the first one is simply just getting cash. You have something in the real world that you want to do, and you can borrow against your crypto asset in order to do that. Usually, it's higher ticket items and stuff like that, but not always. Like there's a interesting story of a user that I spoke to that was working in DeFi at some project, and when the bear market hit, basically he had all of this crypto that he had accumulated over the bull run and the previous bear market, and he started working in crypto from some other industry, and unfortunately, like the project that he was working with, like didn't last basically. So he found himself without an income for an extended period of time, and was able to borrow against his crypto in order to get him through sort of this rough patch, so to speak. So that's number one, being able to borrow against your crypto for like a real world use, like something you actually need, like cash you actually need in your real life. The second one we see, and maybe I'll give like a personal example here, is borrowing for yeah borrowing for to be able to capture some type of like some type of yield spread. So basically, what we've
like a
seen in
basis
DeFi,
trade or carry trade, right? Sorry,
exactly,
yeah, like
exactly,
carry
exactly.
trade, basis trade, like that sort of idea. Yeah.
Exactly. So in and kind of turning your underlying collateral into like a little bit of a yield bearing asset, and you still are taking some risk by depositing it wherever you're depositing it, but you're not necessarily taking like price risk because you're not going and putting that asset somewhere else in terms of like spending it or something like that. You should, in theory, always be able to call it or get it and then come back and pay back your loan. But the reason why people do this is to capture the spread between the rate of interest that you're paying to borrow and the rate of interest that you're getting from the place that you have deposited it. And a really great example of this actually right now is SUSDE. It's still slightly positive today. I think the yield at SUSD or with Athena is around 17%. But at one point it was upwards of 30%. And you had this quite large spread between being able to borrow on some protocols and being able to deposit on Athena, or in their vault, I think is 4626 vault. So you could just swap to it, I believe. So yeah, that is the second big thing. And lastly, something that is very interesting with these borrow vaults that you see more so in bull markets. So we're going to start to see it, I think, a lot more now, and you're going to see a lot more of these opportunities come up, is being able to sort of capture a little bit more upside from borrowing against your collateral, whatever it may be, ETH, Grab BTC, whatever it is. And there are two things there. First is being able to farm, quote unquote. So let's use Athena again as an example. Again, I'll use a personal example here. It's being able to, for example, you can lock USDE and earn sats, sats right now, shards before.
Yeah.
And that's another way that you can do it. So you're not actually, and then you have an implied yield that you're getting, but it's denominated this time in ENA in this case, or some other token in other cases. So that's another way that people use borrow positions. And the last way is a little bit more degen, let's say, because you are taking on price risk, which is, hey, you can borrow against your collateral and you can go and buy other crypto assets that you might believe in. So let's say, you want to invest in a project, or you want to do an angel investment, or you want to buy a new token or a meme coin, even like Mog or Pepe or, something like
I
that.
forgot about Mog. Yeah.
I mean, Mog is great. You can do that too. And you can still keep exposure to your underlying, core holdings, and then go bid some degen stuff if you'd like. So a little bit long-winded, but those are basically the whys behind borrow.
Okay, amazing. That sounds yeah. It sounds really powerful, and I know, like, from our own data, right? Borrow is still, I think, probably the most popular product in volume terms on Summer.fi. It was obviously the first product we ever had on Summer.fi. It's kind of borrowing was kind of the birth of DeFi as well, right? Like basic borrow, and so on. When like kind of, I guess, as well, yield, like the kind of basis trade stuff you talked about. Like originally it was just like LPing into, like, is it Uniswap or Curve or something early on, but now there's many more options as well. So let's talk about the values of it a little bit. Like you talked about you talked about a few things and so on, but like we obviously spent a long time last time talking about automation. It's like you're obviously putting a volatile asset and borrowing another asset against it and so on. Like automation is available across most of the borrow products, right? Obviously a little bit dependent on protocols and so on, but like a lot of users obviously still have a fear, like you still can't take liquidation risk with a borrow position, right? Even if you are lending it into another protocol, sometimes there's a lockup period and so on. But yeah,